Hello, in this Unreal 5.6 instructional video we're going to do a lava pool which will affect the player's speed. So this is communicating directly into the BP third person character blueprint and changing the max walk speed property, which is part of the character movement component. So it's like one step beyond the blueprint's kind of surface level properties, if you like. So we're going into like a stage further and targeting a property directly. Now there's sort of risks inherent in this, in that you could end up kind of setting something wrongly or putting a negative where a positive should have been, or vice versa. So there's one small sort of safety element in this, but there's better ways of doing that even. And there's probably better ways of doing this for slightly different purposes or slightly different sort of levels of complexity. Anyway, so what's going to happen is that the third person character is going to go through the lava pool and have the max walk speed, which is it's a run speed effectively, the maximum speed on land, negatively affected. And after a period then that will go back to the default setting, or rather the setting that it started the level with. Okay, so if I press play now, so we're going to walk into that lava pool there, or run into it. So if I do kind of run and then bam, yep. And then after a time we're back to the former speed. Okay, so we're going to make a blueprint for that. I'll just show you kind of the exemplar blueprint briefly. So this is the blueprint that did all of that, and we're going to recreate that in a different blueprint. So I kind of duplicated this and tested it out. So what happens? First thing is, event begin play, we're going to cast a BP third person character, and we're going to create a character reference. Now, as it says here, any blueprint that communicates with the third person character, or even to the first person character, should really have this, because it allows you to very quickly, conveniently drag out a reference whenever you need one, instead of kind of always linking through to this, or always doing a cast to, which is slightly expensive in resource terms. So if you can get everything done on begin play, you could actually do this slightly earlier on, in that there is a construction script, which is in some ways it's the better place to do all this, but we can at least keep it sort of simple and obvious by keeping it all in the event graph. So we've reset this character reference, but actually we need to do something with the output straight off from the cast to, which is we're accessing the third person character movement, we are accessing its max walk speed, and we are setting a variable we're going to call character speed with whatever the max walk speed is set to. Now by default from the third person template it's 600 centimeters a second, something like that. I forget the exact units, but yeah, so it's 600 whatever's. So what we can do, we don't need to remember the units as such, but you just need to know that number. So as soon as play starts, we've recorded what that original speed was, because obviously we're going to want to set it back to whatever it was. So you know, you've got kind of a place to set that speed before play starts, and then play events can themselves influence and reset that speed. Okay, so the action in this case is governed by time. So when we overlap the trigger, this timeline runs. Now the timeline is really half a second. It's like a half a second process to slow the character down. So it starts from the full value and by the end of the timeline, the value is reduced by half. So it's kind of halved in a process that takes half a second. So it's quite a quick timeline, and it's not really necessary to do this in the timeline. You could have it kind of jump down to half of what it is. The timeline gives you the idea that maybe we could just sort of slow this down and over 2 seconds, really make it sort of seem sort of reasonable, not like the character hit a kind of brick wall of sludge. But then again, you might want to do that, whatever you need to use it for. I've really lazily not named that float track in the timeline. So the timeline looks like this, and it starts at a value of 1, and it declines to a value of 0.5. Okay, and I've set the full time length to 0.5 as well, so half a second and half of whatever it started out as. And this is a great way of using the timeline. If you just think about it, what does it need to do? If it only needs to go from a full value to nothing, then if you do it from from a value of 1 to 0, then you can use whatever sort of multiplier you like to control the actual number. But we haven't done anything fancy in that sense. So the calculation looks like this. The player hits the trigger box. So there's my trigger box, and I made that hidden in game false, so you can see that you're definitely hitting the trigger box. Works for testing purposes, that does. Obviously in a game you want to re-put the hidden in game to true, and then it updates and the output gets multiplied, and it gets multiplied by the number of character speed. So the character speed is by default is set to 0, but don't forget at this point our character speed has been set at begin play point. Okay, so I'm not nailing in a particular value other than the one that it has when play starts. So I'm multiplying, it's actually 600, so I'm multiplying our track by 600, so the first frame of the track will be 1 times 600 gives you 600, and that's our new maximum walk speed. Okay, so I'm setting that directly into the property. What I could do is set a variable that I then push into the third person character. So I could have the third person character itself record its own initial speed and then kind of do the calculations in there. But I bunged it in the lava pool. And then just for testing purposes, I've done this print string just to check my values. I've preset this so that when it finishes, that's it's all good, and it's a small element in the environment, which means the player will quickly go to the end overlap point, and at that point there's a delay, so 3 seconds. So essentially speed decreases, half speed, and then 3 seconds later, it's kind of 3 seconds and however many paces it takes to get to the end overlap. So pretty much 3 seconds. 3 seconds later, it's going to then play the reverse. So it'll then start working backwards and therefore adding from 0.5 up to 1, reinstalling the value as it should be. Okay, so it's not perfect, but it gets the job done. What you might want to do is a different approach would be forget the on component end overlap and do everything in the timeline. So have like a 10-second long timeline, or in this case 3-second long timeline, where the value is decreased, and then after that it boops up again. Or keep the timeline, make it kind of decrease rapidly, and then have another thing like a health pickup, where that then shoots the value back up, not shoots the value, that makes the value rise back up to whatever it originally started at. And that's the sort of circumstance where you want the player character to record its own speed as a variable, and then kind of it knows what it should be set at when it's reset by picking up health or Scooby Snacks or whatever. Okay, so let's go through the making of the blueprint. In terms of the visuals, we have a trigger box and we have a lava pool. The material for that is kind of another tutorial, so that will come at some point. Anyway, okay, so what I'm going to do is minimize this and then go to the content browser, and I want to work on this lava pool, but also substitute in for the one I had. That's interesting. Right, okay, so what you can do is select something in the content browser, right click, and it's my duplicate there. But I'll switch in. Replace selected actors with Lava Pool BP, which is the blueprint, so the name doesn't change. I kind of swapped it in before and swapping it back now. Okay, so Lava Pool BP is the one in the level now. So if I go back to the level and have a look, you can see it's got no trigger box, so we're going to add that in. So Lava Pool BP, it looks like that, which might be scaled wrongly, but we'll find out when we get there. Okay, so to default scene root, so we're going to make sure that the trigger box is on the same hierarchical level as the lava pool, so they can be sort of independent of one another if necessary. It's just a habit to get into. It's a good habit to get into. Okay, so there's the trigger box. Of course, it needs lifting up. So the trigger box extent is 32. So if I lift it up by 32 in the Z, that should mean it's kind of resting on the ground and not going to get in the way of anything. And of course, the trigger box and the lava pool are somehow the same size. I'm not quite sure how that happened, to be honest, but it's a happy accident. Okay, so that's good to go, and I'm just going to take my hidden in game off for the trigger box, so we should be able to see it while playing. Okay, so we go to the event graph and get rid of these two because they're about actor begin overlap, and then we're just going to build out from here. Cast to the BP third person character. Forgot the BP, but it doesn't matter. It kind of averages out what you want. And then from into there, we need to give the object, which is get player character. Okay, from here we do a promote to variable. That has an awful name, so we go up to here to Control A to select it all and type in char ref. Okay, any one you make, as many blueprints as you like, use that as the char ref, unless you've got a lot of different types of character like NPCs and such like, but char ref looks pretty good. Yeah, might want to add in player index 0 or player index whatever, PI 0, just in case. Okay, but now, so we've done that at begin play, and at this point we also want to use this character reference. We want to get character movement. So if you go and investigate the BP third person character, you'll find that it has a separate character movement component, and this has all the stuff about walking and swimming and jumping and potentially crawling as well. So then we want to come out of there and we want to do get max walk speed. Although it's called that, it does actually mean, you know, the maximum speed of walking or running. So I'm just going to bunch these up slightly and do a compile. And from here we're going to make another variable. So we're going to promote to variable, and it's going to be called character speed, jar speed. Okay, connect those two up and compile, and that's done. So it might help just for, you know, when you come back to it in a few days time or a few weeks, select it all and then put a comment in. Okay, so let's compile. So what are we targeting? Let's have a look at the BP third person character. So go content browser and fold up all the stuff. I've added a few extra items in just to try and see what's there, really. Just to have a scout around. So third person blueprints is where we find BP third person character, and in that blueprint, if we go over here, we can see character movement, and then over on this side, if we go down to walking, there we go, max walk speed 600. You just need the number, you don't need to bother about the units. 600 centimeters a second. I'm trying to think how much that's pretty, yeah, that's a decent sort of trot. So this is the specific element we're targeting through code. Okay, that's enough of that. Okay, so we've got our trigger box. Let's get some events for it. So we're going to go add event on component begin over that. And this is really super simple because we haven't added any sort of checks to see who is it who's hit our trigger. Which kind of begs the question, like, could an AI go through this and make the player run slower? Yes, it probably could. So I'm going to call this down speed. Even though it's actually going to work for both. So down speed, this is a double click it to go into it. We want to add a float track. We want the length of the float track to be 0.5, which obviously slims down the old pale grey. It doesn't want to go any further than any less than 2, but anyway, as soon as we have keys. So we're going to start with holding shift down, left click, and the values for this is going to be 0 and 1 as the value. So the properties are going to be 0 for time and 1 for value, what's coming out at the other end. And then we'll shift click again. We only need 2 keys for this, and this time the key value is 0.5, and tabbing over to that value is also 0.5. It's just kind of, the time value is sort of arbitrary in a lot of ways, but the value is kind of half speed. So we're using a number outside of this timeline that would be kind of half. And there's more elegant ways of doing this, and ways that mean you can't get the 2 bits sort of disconnected by choosing different numbers, but we're going to do the sort of quick and dirty. But I'm just going to change the name of this track actually, partly because I can. Is it F2? Yes, it is. So it's speed down. Okay, so at this point it's the reduction in speed is sort of cushioned over half a second. You might use the whole timeline as a fixed amount decrease in speed over however many seconds you choose, and then it goes back up towards the end. But this is a sort of like a double usage one. So if I go back to the trigger, and I can do the add event on component end overlap, and that will go into reverse from end. Okay, no it won't. I'm going to undo that because it goes into delay. So we go delay, which is just a thing called delay, and then set that to 2 seconds. It was 3 in the kind of example, but that's fine. And then it goes to reverse from end. And if you use a different timeline, you can make it increase in value and make it take longer. Depends how you want to sort of pace and balance your game. Okay, so then we've got speed down, which is our number that goes from 1 down to 0.5, and the output of that is going to reset the character's speed. So we're going to need a character reference, just there ish, and then we're also going to need our character speed variable. So we're going to get the character speed, oh, I guess I didn't choose a getter or a setter, no matter. Okay, so out of this we go to multiply. As a not natural mathematician, it took me a little while to realise that values between 0 and 1, if you multiply them on anything, whatever other value you started with is going to get smaller until it gets to exactly 1 times. But so let's say at the start we get 600, and the first frame its value is 1, so it's 1 times 600. By the time it gets to the end frame, it's 600 being multiplied, that's 600 being multiplied by the output of this, which is 0.5, so the output is going to be 300. And then with the output we want to set the character's max walk speed, so we have to not do that, we have to do this. We have to put a character reference in, which is a getter, where we have to come out and we have to target the character movement. spelling, get character movement, and then we're going to set the max walk speed with that output there. Just moving some things around to reduce overlappage. So then we're going to do set max walk speed with the output. Set max walk speed. Okay, so link that up to there. Link the output of the multiply to there, and that should be it. I'm going to add in the print string from before, just because I just like to make sure everything's checked out. So print string, and then this output here can connect directly up to that, and you get this automatic kind of data type change thing, because it's only ever going to be a string, so no matter what you put in there, it's going to convert it to a string, no matter what type it starts as. And this should show us kind of live while playing the ongoing update values being changed. So we're expecting values in the range 300 to 600 because we're using 0.5 as our lowest output from the timeline. So this is kind of, it's a kind of cheap version, and if you use more than different timeline for the start and end, then you could make the kind of struggle back up to full speed more progressive. If you use one timeline just as the only kind of value, you could have all the amount of time, the delay kind of buried in the timeline instead. Or you could make sure that the value was changed by some other event, like a pickup. So the speed is kept down until the player gets to a particular pickup, which increases their health or energy or stamina or whatever you want it to be. Okay, I think this should go, but a playtest will confirm this. So it's Lava Pool BP, that's the one we've been working with. Let's go back to here, which is the one we've just been editing in, so I'll save this one. And okay, so we had 2 seconds in this one, and that one's 3 seconds, so the amount of time it is reduced will be kind of, so speed good, speed good, speed good, speed good, and speed slow, and then back up again. There we go. Brilliant. Phew. Okay, new values turn up at the top, so when you saw 300 at the bottom, that was because that got pushed down by events. So probably about, I don't know, 30 frames, although there weren't 30 numbers stacked up there, so I'm running quite slowly maybe. Okay, so yeah, that's how to do that. So this is targeting the third-person character's own sort of values and properties and changing them directly. It's not good practice, but if you want to do it quickly, that's a way to do it. And it's kind of mostly based on the result and what that then allows you to move on to, which is the reason to do it that way rather than to kind of really get hung up on doing it the correct way. Okay, that's it for now. Thanks for watching.